I want to read a scripture to you out of the book of Luke today. In Luke 11:52, listen to Jesus. This is Jesus. This is the Jesus that we love. You teachers of the law of Moses are really in for trouble. You carry the keys to the door of knowledge about God, but you never go in, and you keep others from going in. Here's another translation of that. You snatched away the key of knowledge. Interesting. Obviously, Jesus is not pleased about what is happening to this thing called knowledge and what people are doing with it. Now, when Jesus speaks about knowledge, we know that he's not talking about general information. He's talking about the knowledge of God. He's talking about God knowledge. And when you talk about God knowledge, it really, you can sort of align it with two or three little things to help to describe it. And the first one is this, I want to give you, it is God knows it all. That's God knowledge. God knows it all. The who, what, when, where, how, why of everything, he knows it all. Secondly, he knows it before. God knows it before. You know, this is an amazing thing. God knows it before it is. Did you know that he knew me before I was? Yes, he knew me before I was born. Now, this is really amazing because when you think about it, okay, I was born in 1955, but God knew me before then. So when did he first know me? Well, it's obvious when you look at creation that he created you and I on the sixth day. He created me on the sixth day because on the sixth day, God created man in his own image. So he created everybody on the sixth day, but he knew me before that, because I was predestined in him before the foundations of the world. So God knew me, wow, long before I was, he knew me. This is why Paul says we have been chosen according to the foreknowledge of God. So the prearrangement of God. So he knows everything before, which is amazing. And the third part of the knowledge of God is this. You can know God. Wow. Because the knowledge of God is not just a bunch of data. It's actually relationship. It's connection. It's, hey, I can know God. It's intimate connection, relationship, sort of like an Adam knew Eve. It's like when Jesus said to the people in the New Testament, he said, I never knew you. He didn't say I never knew about you. He said, I never knew you. No intimate connection, relationship. Knowing, it is amazing. You and I can know God. We can know Jesus. Not about him. We can actually have an intimate connection with him. That's the knowledge of God. And this is what Jesus is talking about. He says, you guys have kept people from knowing me. You haven't done it, and you've kept other people from doing it as well. Now, Jesus said that knowledge is a key. Now, we know what a key is. A key is something that opens and closes things. It's something that when the keeper, whoever is the keeper of the key, has control. They have access. They can open and shut. They can enter and exit. But a key is also something like a solution. A key can be a solution. A key can be an answer. But a key can be almost like an explanation as well. But a key can also be something that is instrumental. That key thought, that key thing, something instrumental, something crucial. So Jesus says that knowledge is the key. In fact, what he is saying here is the knowledge of God is the key to life. The key of knowledge is the way to real life. The key opens the door to real life, to connection, to all that God has for me. Now, because it is so powerful, this thing called knowledge, the enemy wants to keep you and I from the knowledge of God. Isn't that right? Come on. Because he wants to keep me from anything that would allow me to know him. And we're not talking about being saved. We're talking about knowing God. Today, tomorrow, whenever. Knowing God. So Jesus said there are people that want to snatch away the knowledge. Now, here is a definition of what that word literally means. To take away what is clearly someone else's, being rightfully theirs, and what they absolutely need in order to pull them put them in a place of disadvantage, making them much worse off as a result. That when Jesus said, you have taken away the key of knowledge, you snatched it away, that's what he means right there. You have taken away something that somebody absolutely needs, they must have, and if they don't have it, they are at a place of disadvantage and are going to be much worse off for not having it. So clearly, the knowledge of God is a key. It is a key for me and for you. What is it exactly? If we could sum up the knowledge of God, I want to give you 3 things today that will help you to sum up the knowledge of God. Because the Bible says this is the key to life right here. The first part of the knowledge of God is this. It's what I don't know. Do you know there are things you don't know? One of the reasons why we don't know things is because God has hidden them from us. Here, check this scripture out. Deuteronomy 29:29. There are some things that the Lord our God has kept secret. Only he knows these things, but he told us about some things. And these teachings are for us and our descendants forever, and we must obey all the commands in the law. So there are things that are hidden and secret. There are things that are mysteries, because God has chosen to keep them to himself. Here is Paul in the New Testament saying exactly the same thing. Now we see only, 1 Corinthians 13, now we only see a dim likeness of things. It is as if we were seeing them in a foggy mirror. But someday we will see clearly. We will see face to face. Whoops, I missed one. What I know now is not complete, but someday I will know completely, just as God knows me completely. So there are plans, purposes, mysteries, tapestries in God, mosaics in God, things that we do not understand because he has kept them hidden and they are secret from us. Now, this is an interesting thing. This is exactly sort of, I don't know if you can see this. Yeah, you can see it much better there. This is a mosaic. I shared this with the church several years ago. This is a mosaic with an image in it, and it is a mosaic that is made up of scenes out of the movie White Christmas. And every one of those little blocks in that mosaic is a particular scene in the movie. It's a still from the movie. And when those stills are arranged a certain way, it brings forth an image. Now, the amazing thing about this is this. The image of the star comes out when all of those little mosaic pieces are arranged a certain way. So this is what Jesus is doing with me. He is taking all of the stills of my life, and he is making an image of himself out of those stills. Now, all of that stuff is a secret. It's all hidden. It's all a mystery to me. I don't understand how all that works. Now, I want you to notice, every one of the stills on that screen are all the same size, which tells me that not one single scene, no one single scene in my life is going to dominate the image that is coming forth. Hello? Now we say, oh, this is a big deal. That's an awesome thing. That's a horrible thing. That is marring the image. No, God says, look, they're all the same size. No matter whether they're the dark ones or they're the colorful ones or what they are, all of those are the same size because God declares in his secrets and in his mysteries that he is putting my life together in such a way that his image is going to come forth. And he understands that, and we don't. We don't understand the tapestries. We don't understand all of the purposes and the plans. He's kept that to himself. So, that's something that I don't know. But it's part of the knowledge of God. Now, there's another part to this as well. It's not just what is hidden and secret. It's what has been covered and concealed that I do not know as well. Here is an example. In Luke 12, listen to Jesus. There is nothing covered up that will not be uncovered, or hidden that will not become known. Now, Jesus said there's nothing covered up that will not be uncovered. But he's already telling you there's stuff covered up. And the reason why there's stuff covered up is because the enemy has things he does not want you and I to know. Because if we know them, we will act differently. We will choose differently. We will believe differently. We will walk differently. If we have that knowledge, it will change the way. This is why people don't know Jesus. Because they don't know that they're supposed to know Jesus. You see, deception is just not knowing something. It is that I don't know what I don't know that I don't know. You see, I don't know it, but I don't know that I don't know it. And because I don't know that I don't know it, I don't know that there's a heaven. I don't know that there's a hell. I don't know that there's an eternity. I don't know that I'm supposed to serve God. I don't know that he has a plan for my life. I don't know any of this. That's the deception that comes. And this is what, I think I have this one, what Paul says. Yeah, their intelligence has been shrouded in darkness. So there are things that are concealed and covered up because the enemy does not want me to know them. And so deception is keeping from me the very things that I need to know. Let me tell you, I got a call from my sister on Friday. A guy that I went to school with when I was in grade school and middle school. He was a fourth generation citrus grower in Florida. Fourth generation. All his father, his grandfather, and his great-grandfather, they all had exactly the same name. He was William Graves the fourth. There were 4 generations of citrus men, wealthy people, doing very well in citrus. He's my age. She called me on Friday and told me he took his own life. I'm sure he has children, probably has grandchildren. He took his own life. Do you know why people do that? Because people don't know. They don't know stuff. Because if they did know stuff that they don't know, they wouldn't do what they do. And so the enemy keeps things concealed and covered, so people will do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do, they wouldn't normally do, but they do because they don't know. And then they do know other things. So for instance, I don't want Jesus. I'm not going to serve Jesus. Because I know I don't need Jesus. So now I have knowledge over here that's working against this over here. So number one, part of the knowledge of God is what I don't know. There are things that I do not know. That's part of the knowledge. The second is what I shouldn't know. There are things that I should not know. By the way, not things like, I've been walking on a trail for probably 5 or 6 years now. I try to do it as often as I can. And I've come to one conclusion. Out of 6 years, the wisdom that I've received after 6 years of walking on this trail is this: Lycra is not your friend. Trust me. It's not your friend. Now watch what happened. Adam and Eve, God says, I give you a choice. Because that's life. Life is choice. All life is choice. I give you a choice. You can eat from this tree. And this tree will give you life. Because you will know me when you eat this tree. Because that's life. Life is knowing him. Or you can eat this tree over here. And if you eat this tree over here, you can know some other stuff. Because it's a tree of knowledge. So you're going to know stuff over here. And depending on which tree you eat of, that's what you're going to know. So as long as they ate of this tree over here, all they knew was the knowledge of God. You can do anything with the knowledge of God. You can live fully, completely, and totally on the knowledge of God. You don't need to know anything else but what God knows. Right? That's it. I don't need to know what's over there. All I need is the knowledge of God, right? So what do? They eat of this tree over here. Now, when they eat of this tree over here, because they have dominion, and because they are the channel and the conduit for everything on their earth, which God has given to them, as soon as they eat of that tree, they become conduits then for another kind of knowledge. Just like when you eat something and it goes into your body, well, when they ate, it came into the earth. And so what was introduced into the earth was another kind of knowledge. It was a knowledge that was apart from God. It was knowledge that was different from the knowledge of God. And so it was another kind of knowledge, but it was also a knowledge that was opposing and contrary to the knowledge of God. It wasn't just added on, it was also antagonistic to and opposing the knowledge of God. So here's what happened. As soon as they ate, they knew something. We're naked. This is why God said to them, how'd you know that? Because God said, I never told you that. Because that is not part of the knowledge of God. They knew to hide. They knew to run. They knew to cover up. They knew to resist God. They knew to be afraid. All of those things that they knew from a knowledge that wasn't the knowledge of God. So this is amazing. This is what happens. They ate from that knowledge, and that knowledge was then pushing them away from the heart of God, pushing them away from the things of God. So they ate of that, and they took on another kind of knowledge. Now, watch what happens in the book 2 Corinthians. Paul says, what we are dealing with is every proud thing that raises itself against the knowledge of God. So there is something that is continually raising itself against the knowledge of God, which is all I need to live life, is knowing Him. Now, in the book of Acts, this actually came up on Wednesday night. In the book of Acts, there is this story. Acts 28, when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and laid them on the fire, a viper came out because of the heat. Now, if you want to know when the vipers come out when the heat comes up. Come on. You know, people go, oh, well, you know, things are okay. No, wait till you turn the heat up. The heat tests everything. You want to know what your home's like? Wait till the heat turns up on the home, right? You want to know what my heart's like? Wait till the heat turns up. A viper came out because of the heat and fastened on his hand. Now, when the natives, which matter, their opinion matters, right? Because, I mean, people's opinions matter more than the knowledge of God. When the natives saw the creature hanging from his hand, they said to one another, no doubt this man is a murderer, whom, though he has escaped from the sea, yet justice, by the way, that's a female deity they're referring to, justice has not allowed to live. However, he shook off the creature into the fire, and he wasn't harmed. So, here is an amazing thing. Paul gets bit, and this thing's hanging on him, and they're telling him, you are a murderer. And guess what? They were right. He was a murderer. In fact, Paul, in his own words in the book of Acts, says, I hounded those Christians to death. He dragged people out of their homes, fathers, mothers, children, looked like the Holocaust. He dragged them out of their homes, imprisoned them, killed them, horribly, unmercifully, tried to destroy anybody and everybody who believed in Jesus Christ. He was so anti anything that had to do with Jesus, to destroy anything that was in the, quote, way. That's who he was. But you know what's amazing about this? He doesn't know that anymore. He could have said, oh, you're right, I'm a murderer. Now I've got 6 fingers. That's who I am. He doesn't know it anymore. You say, Pastor Buddy, how do you know he doesn't know it? Because listen to what this scripture says in 1 Corinthians 4:4. I don't know of anything against me. What do you mean you don't know anything against you? We could put a laundry list of stuff that you've done. And Paul says, I don't know it. Why? Because he says, I shouldn't know that. I should only know what God says about me. It is amazing how much trouble we can get into knowing something we shouldn't know. I like it. Did God tell you that? Then how do I know it? Does His Word tell me that? Then how do I know it? I only know. If I'm in the knowledge of God, I cannot know anything that I shouldn't know, regardless of what the natives are saying. And they'll say anything, because you know what they said next, right? As soon as he shook it off, they go, oh, you're a god, you're not a murderer. Great. He knew better than that, too. I don't know of anything against me. You see, this is an amazing thing. When I choose to know only the knowledge of God, it produces His image and likeness in me. When I choose not to know the knowledge of God, and I know things that I shouldn't know, I become then like Adam and Eve, and it produces a marred, false image in me. Listen to what Solomon said. Proverbs 24, knowledge fills the rooms. He's talking about a house. Knowledge fills the rooms with rare and beautiful treasures. This is what the knowledge of God does in my life. It is transformational. When I understand there are things that I shouldn't know, I refuse to know, I am not going to know, even though it might be blatantly obvious. The natives can see it, everybody can see it, but God has not said it. And so therefore, I will not embrace it. What I shouldn't know. And number 3, there are things that I must know. Must know. Listen to Jesus. The Scripture says, Matthew 4:4, no one can live only on food. People need every word that God has spoken. Here's another take on that. You actually live on every word that comes out of God's mouth. This is what is called a preceding word. It is a flow of the knowledge of God. Jesus is telling us how you live is you live off of and on the knowledge of God. What God is saying, what God is doing. There are things that you and I absolutely must know. Let me give you a couple of them. The first one is this. You and I must know the heart of God for us, for me. I must know God's heart toward me. I must experientially know His love. Not in a worship song. Your love never fails, never gives up. You know, that's true. That's true. But it's also to be experienced. I must experience, because this is what the knowledge of God is. It is experiential. I must know His grace. I must know His favor. I must know His embrace. I must know His heart, His intimacy, myself. Why? Because when I do, nothing can separate me from Him. There is no accusation, no twinge of darkness, no suspicion can ever get in the way. Paul says, what can separate us from the love of Christ? And he lists all of these things. Well, I'll tell you what, there's a big list of things that do. But not when we are experiencing His love. I am knowing His heart. That's not standard church stuff. You know what I'm saying? That's not come in, plug in, sing a couple of songs, listen to a couple of stories, and go home. That is an encounter with God on a progressive, proceeding basis. I am knowing His heart. My family rejects me, but I know God's heart toward me. People trash me, but I know God's heart toward me. I'm connected to His heart. Another thing, I must know His interpretation for my life. I have to know what He says about what's happening to me. I need His interpretation. God, what does this mean? What's this about? Why is this happening? What's going on here? I have to know His take on life. I cannot make my own interpretation of life. It's spirit in nature, and it requires His interpretation. And once I have the knowledge of God about what I am going through, I am at peace. There is no chance of any suspicion with God when I know what I'm going through and I hear His interpretation and I know and encounter His interpretation for this. This is what happened to Joseph. He said, you meant that for evil. But he said, I got God's interpretation on this. And God meant it for good. And that changed his entire way of living. It changed the way he responded to his brothers, the way he handled adversity in Egypt, everything by that one thing. And the third one, I must know His dealings in my life. Do you know, in the Old Testament, God shows Himself with His acts and His ways. But in the New Testament, the veil comes down and we enter into a much deeper place with God than ever before through Jesus Christ. When Jesus came, things started happening that had never happened before, and one of this was this. The roots in people's lives started to be exposed. John, when he came, he said, hey, the axe is being laid to the root. Well, the reason why is because the roots were being exposed. The presence of God, the presence of Jesus exposes the roots of our lives. You and I both know what we are rooted in and what is rooted in us will determine how we live. If I'm rooted and built up in Him, if I'm rooted in the love of God, it's going to make all the difference, as opposed to if a root of bitterness or resentment is rooted in me. And so Jesus comes along, and one of the reasons why a lot of people didn't really appreciate Him so much is because everywhere He went, He uncovered things. He uncovered things. Not out of meanness, not out of punishment, not out of penalty. He did it because if He doesn't uncover, He cannot resolve. And so if God doesn't deal deeply with me, I do not change. I might be a great church member, but I'm not going to change. Fundamentally, I won't be transformed. Because here's why. God is deep. Paul tells us that. The Spirit reveals to us the what? The deep things of God. So we know God is deep. Well, if God is deep, that means that anything He creates in His image also has to be deep. How can He create me in His image if He's deep and I'm not? So I'm as deep as God. You and I have depth to us. Now, the reason why people are shallow is because something has filled in the depths. And so Jesus comes along and wants to open up to be able to deal with the very depths of our life that allow us to be transformed. I must know what it means to have God dealing with me. I'm just not talking about a little bit of conviction of sin. I'm talking about a very deep, abiding dealing on the inside of me that is creating. Here's what happened. My wife will give you the best testimony of this of anybody in the whole world. 39 years ago, we got married. She had no idea what she was marrying. I didn't either, but she didn't. She especially. Seriously, that is not meant to be funny. But once in a while it was a little bit, but most of the time it wasn't funny. She had no idea what she was marrying. I was a nice guy. I think I'm sort of a nice guy. She loved me. I loved her. She had no idea what was inside of me. And you know what? I didn't either. That's the crazy thing about it. That's the grievous thing about it. I had no idea what was deep down inside of me. All of the wounding and the hurt and the dysfunction that was deep down inside of me. I had no idea. You know one of the reasons why? Because when we got married in 1978, virtually nobody in the Christian world was talking about inner healing. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody knew anything about, God needs to work a deep work. No, it's just, here, give him something to do and hey, just go home and do right. Basically, that was the counsel. But all of a sudden, because of the dynamic of relationship and the dynamic of his presence, which always uncovers things. This is why people a lot of times don't want to be in the presence of God, because it uncovers things. Remember, Moses and Miriam and Aaron are standing there. All of a sudden, God showed up. And listen to what he said to them. I want you three at the tent of my presence now. That's what he told them. And they stepped over to the tent of his presence, and God said, now, you two, I'm going to tell you what you've just done, you're not doing anymore. Who do you think you are speaking against my servant? Remember that? That was exposed at the tent of his presence. That wasn't exposed in worship. That wasn't exposed in service and activity. The presence is what exposes things so that they can be dealt with. And so I had all of this stuff, and it has been a process. She's still blonde and smiling. I mean, thank God. But I'm telling you what, it has not been easy, because there is stuff that had to be uncovered and it had to be dealt with, and that required honesty and transparency. But it's part of the knowledge of God. That's what the knowledge of God does. It uncovers things. Why? So we can be exposed? No. So we can be free. So we can be whole. So we can be the kind of people that can be intimately involved with our God. That's why. The dealings of God, I must know them. Listen to Daniel. Oh, never mind. You already know that. Paul told the Hebrews, said there's nothing hidden with God. He sees it all. Yeah. Listen to Daniel. The people who know their God, the people who are walking in the progressive knowledge of God, the proceeding knowledge of God, they shall be strong and do great things. I want to do that. I want to be strong. I want to do great things. The key is knowledge. What I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. Ask God, God, what is it that I don't know right now that perhaps I need to know? You know, I could have asked that question in 1978, and God would probably said, delay your marriage for a couple of years. I need to work on you. What is it that I don't know? What is it right now that I shouldn't know that I do know? What am I knowing right now that I shouldn't know? And what is it that I must know, that I need to know right now, that I need to know you more?